Dag beste kijkers. Vandaag spreken we met een vrouw. Haar naam is Trisha Caetano. Ze is een Amerikaanse en ze is directeur, president van een instituut, een International Institute for Therapy, Training and Integration. Ze reist over de hele wereld en ze geeft haar trainingen in 6 verschillende landen. We gaan straks nog even vragen welke landen ze trainingen geeft. En we doen het gesprek in het Engels. Hello, Trisha.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I just told the audience you travel quite a bit, and particularly you give trainings in 6 countries. Which countries do you give your trainings in?
Everything from Japan to London to the United States to here. I decided one day that I'm a travel addict. That's my one addiction. And so I decided one day that I wanted to work and travel at the same time. Why not? Yeah. And the next thing I knew, within about a year, I think so, within about a year I was working in 6 countries. And I loved it. But the problem became that all I saw was airports and hotel rooms and conference centers, and I was on the lecture circuit. And so I pulled back a little bit on it, because my first focus, my first interest is in healing and in training psychotherapists in the work that I'm doing. So that gave me the most reward, that was the most fun, that was the most interesting. And I went to Australia about 6 times, and I only got to go scuba diving on the Great Barrier Reef once. So I thought, well, that's not why I'm traveling. So I cut it back a little bit, and now I'm focusing on trainings.
I understood that you train psychotherapists, but you train them in a very particular way. You're a pioneer, that's what you told me, about inner child work. So what does this comprehend? What is inner child work?
First of all, I'd like to address integration.
Okay.
And you can't just eat potatoes and get all the nourishment that your body needs. And
You
basically,
you have to know how to peel them.
That's true. You have to start first. But you need. We are multidimensional beings. We have many levels of awareness and understanding, and so you can't just use Gestalt and have that heal all the wounds of the past. You can't just use past life work or inner child work. What I find is that sometimes a client will come to me, and that day they just need to talk. They need to learn how to put in their lives what they've learned. So sometimes they need to come and they need to cry or beat up a pillow. Sometimes they need to go just into deep emotion and feeling. And so as a therapist, I think it's your responsibility to be trained in all of those tools so that you can work with a whole person and work on all the different levels and dimensions that are available. And there's so much available to work with in people.
So that's what you mean by integration.
Yes.
It's not only mental work, it's not only verbal, talking about.
Yeah. It's not only emotional either.
It's right.
Yeah, it's whatever the person needs in the moment.
But you say you address the inner child. So what's going on with the inner child? We're adults, and somewhere we have an inner child.
Not a inner child. We have different levels, different growth levels. We establish different parts of ourselves. In the early 1900s, Roberto Assagioli started something that he called psychosynthesis, which is the concept that we are whole beings and we naturally seek homeostasis, or balance in our lives. So when we are born, we look for balance and harmony in our environment. We look for survival in our environment. And if we come into a toxic or neurotic or psychotic environment, then we have to find the balance, the homeostasis within that craziness, which creates within ourselves the balance then becomes a neurotic balance, which we continue to perpetuate as we get older and then recreate again when we become older. When we are born, a brain is all there and it's all up and working, but it's not wired yet. So only 27% of the brain is wired when we're born. So
what do you mean by wired?
It means that the synapses are going off in the right directions. And what happens is that from the moment of birth, the learning curve is like this, and then it begins to taper off. By the time you're 8 years old, basically you've programmed in all of your beliefs, all of your coping structures, all your survival strategies, every way that you're going to try and function in life. And so, again, if you come into a neurotic environment, you're going to start working with neurotic structures. But my viewpoint is that it begins when the sperm hits the egg. And so you come in with all that you inherit. You come in with everything that happens in the womb and the environment in the womb, if it's peaceful or if there's violence in the family or if the person is eating poorly. All of that's going to create what you come in with. Then if you believe in past lives, then you carry forward unfinished work or re-stimulated experiences from the past lives. So when you first come in, if you are nurtured, and this is the wonderful thing about Holland, is that you have your babies at home, and when they're born, you put them right on the belly and then right on the breast and
not for long anymore, by the way.
Unfortunately. Now
we slowly start to take over,
and that's
American
a pity.
way.
That's
Absolutely.
a pity.
It's terrible.
Because in the 1920s, America began to become affluent. And as we became affluent, we had our babies in hospitals. And the first thing he did was take the baby away from the mother, put them in glass boxes and little nurseries, and then every 4 hours come along and shove a bottle in their mouths. And then the mother would take the baby home a week later. So most of these children, their first experience is abandonment anxiety, and that's how we came into the world. The affluence also at the time, you may remember the Roaring '20s where the dresses were straight up and down and the women would bind their breasts and get out there and do their thing, and so the children weren't even nursed by the mothers. And this is my personal viewpoint, but I think that Americans are a nation of addicts. Because we have that sense of that empty hole inside, and we're constantly looking for something to fill it. Food, work, objects, people, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It makes me sad to see it coming here.
But how did you come? Because it's an interesting thing. Suppose, what you now describe means that we live in a world where we are all born with this traumatic experience. I know only few, and maybe none, where there is harmony, where there is balance, where there is either very good food, nourishment, etc., etc., etc. So we all are the same. So where did you got your sense of what is harmony, what is balance, what is a fulfilled human being, what is healing when the whole society is being born and created like this?
Yeah, I look at the kids now with all the video games and all the spiked hair, and I think, my God, these poor kids, they're struggling to find a place in this culture that is so devoid of the passion, so devoid of connecting. So devoid of human interaction. We interact with machines now. We interact through drugs, and most of the time we don't interact at all. We're so busy running around trying to earn more money. There's a desperate loneliness in the Western culture now. So compassion is a lot of what this work is about. Reconnecting to who you were, who you are. I always say therapy is about peeling off the lies. I have to have money to have value. I have to be successful to be worthwhile. I have to be happily married to be a good person. All of these beliefs we have that limit our creativity, our ability to live life fully. So my personal interest in the inner child work was one of your questions.
Right.
When I of course, we all have to have training. We all have to have a certain number of hours of therapy. And so I'd been training Gestalt and I voice dialogue, and had a lot of work that I was doing. I was doing past life trainings at one point. And then I heard the word inner child, and it just went, that's my next step. And so basically it was my own work. And the first I heard of it, there was one psychologist in all of San Diego, California, doing it. So I called her up and I said, I would like to make an appointment. This is my next step. So I went there and we sat down, and she said, okay, now we're going to find a child. So I came up with myself at the age of 6. I kind of that was just the image that came up. So as soon as I saw myself at 6, I hated myself because I was a pleaser. And I was always taking care of people and trying to be nice at the age of 6. And so as soon as I saw her, this rage came up, and I thought, I hate her. And it's ruined my life, this trying to... And so she had an agenda, which I didn't know about. She said, okay, now put your arms around the little girl and tell her you love her. I said, I hate her and I want her dead. And she just got terrified. She just emotionally disappeared out of the room, and I'm sitting there with all of my anger and all of my feelings. And so so I put myself back together emotionally, and then she said, are you okay now? Are you okay? And I said, yes, I'm fine. And so I left, and I said, called up a friend of mine who I'd done Gestalt with, and I said, hey, I got this kid inside me, I got to kill her. And so she said, well, that sounds kind of extreme. And I said, I don't care. I said, I hate her and I want her dead. So she said, all right. So we started to do this session, and she said, it doesn't feel right to kill the kid. She said, why did you become a pleaser? And I said, well, I don't know. So I closed my eyes, and she said, okay, recall when you first started pleasing people. And I immediately looked at myself at the age of 4. And there had been
Can you explain? Wait a minute. Can you just to interrupt
certainly.
for a moment? Can you explain a little bit, because pleasing and pleasing. Why? I mean, you come from the negative point of pleasing, while naturally your being could be of a lovely human being who loves to do things for others as a natural gift of your personality. But you somehow put it into the frame of pleasing was bad. How was the pleasing bad? How was you see, doing things you actually don't want to do in order to survive?
You just answer your own question.
Right.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with kindness and connecting and interacting with people. When it starts to become self-destructive, when you begin to please at the expense of your own peace of mind, your own integrity, your own dignity, that's when it becomes neurotic, and that's when you begin to need to work in that area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, do you want me to go on, or you want to go in another direction?
The healing process, because that's quite an interesting. I mean, how does one heal?
You get to cause. You must get to cause.
Right.
And I'll finish that story quickly because
Take your time.
Went back to an incident at the age of 4 where I had physically injured myself very badly, and my father took me to the clinic, and they had to sew up my leg. But both the doctor and my father had tickets to the football game, and so neither one of them wanted to be bothered with his child. Okay. So I knew I had to be good. That was already locked in, and so I wasn't crying. And he gave me the anesthetic, and then he began to sew me up before the anesthetic took. And so I couldn't control it anymore. I began to scream. My father was standing at the top of the table saying, "Be quiet, you're embarrassing me, stop this." And at that moment, I made the decision that if he can't love me now, he never will. And that's the start of the pleasing.
Very touching.
Yeah. And so when I went through that trauma emotionally, and then I moved back into my adult, at that moment, I took the 4-year-old and I took the 6-year-old that I hated, and I brought them both inside me. And that was the origin of my work with the inner child work. At the time, it was okay, we have this happy little child we left behind, so we go back and find that happy little child and we love her, and then we're happy. And I realized in that moment for my own work that you have to do the trauma, you have to do the points of decision where you create the lies that stop your creativity in living. And so from that I developed a whole